their sales of fluoridated products would really hit the basement if it was found that small amounts of fluoride were contributing to osteosarcoma, which is a frequently fatal bone cancer.
Do you know?
So, to add one layer of bizarreness to bizarreness, we have the fact that fluoridation may actually be killing a few young men in the United States each year, and yet the research was given over to a dental school.
Killing a few young... Now, before 1950s, was this the case before fluoride hit the water? Did we see these cases popping up in the young people?
No, it's a very rare cancer. I think there's only about 400 cases of osteosarcoma in young men in the United States each year. So it's a very rare cancer, but of course a very significant one if you're one of the rare cases, because it's, as I said, it's frequently fatal, and if it's not fatal, you lose a limb or two in an effort to cure it. And I must complete the story because it's quite disturbing.
Please do.
And in a way, I guess it's also a positive, because one of Professor Chester Douglas, this is the professor in question at Harvard, one of his graduate students did do an excellent study. Despite Douglas's bias, she obviously had an open mind, and she did a study, and she found, she used a different approach from anybody else. She found that young boys, if they were exposed to fluoridated water, 1 part per million, if they're exposed to fluoridated water in their 6th, 7th, or 8th years, which corresponds to the mid-childhood growth spurt. So they're exposed in this short period of time, 6, 7, and 8. They had a 5 to 7-fold increased risk of succumbing to osteosarcoma. Now, as I say, it's quite remarkable that this is a graduate student at Harvard who was actually a dentist. Her name is Elise Bassin. And then that's the science. Now, look at the politics. The politics is that Chester Douglas, the professor who signed her thesis for 3 years, didn't tell people that she'd found that. He went to England and told the British Fluoridation Society exactly what they wanted to hear, which is, my work shows no relationship between osteosarcoma and fluoridation, even though he knew that his student had found the opposite of what he was telling them. He didn't tell them that. And he didn't tell the National Research Council, and he didn't tell his funders at the NIH that he had found this. And it was only when my son went to the rare books section of one of the Harvard libraries, acting on a tip-off, and found Bassin's doctoral thesis, that this came to light, that she had found this, not from the professor, but from my son going to the library. And then it was released to the press, and it was a bit of a scandal. Now, run the clock forward. She made that discovery. Her thesis was defended in 2001. My son found her thesis in 2005. In 2006, she published her work in a journal, a cancer journal. And the same issue of the journal, this is the politics now, is a letter from Chester Douglas, her professor. Very unusual this for a professor to pull the rug from underneath his graduate student, discounting her thesis, saying that his larger study would show that her thesis doesn't hold. Well, he promised that study for the summer of 2006. We waited and waited and waited for this study to come out. Meanwhile, various agencies in the pro-fluoridation countries like Australia and Ireland and England and Canada and the United States were using this promise of a study that would negate this study. The promise, which is unpublished and unpeer-reviewed study, is being used to negate her findings.
Really?
Her findings have been published. The notion that they would not hold were not published, but they used that, and then eventually Douglas's paper was finally published in 2011, and guess what? It did not refute her thesis. It did not show that in the larger study, young boys exposed in the 6th, 7th, 8th years did not have this increased risk of osteosarcoma, nor could their study have done it, and they must have known that from the very moment they issued this promise, because their biometric for exposure was bone samples.
But why would they do this?
And as far as the bone is concerned, you only get those at autopsy or biopsy long after this short period of 6th, 7th, and 8th years. I mean, it's not like you're cutting a tree down and looking at the rings. When you measure the level of fluoride in bone, that's cumulative. That tells you how much fluoride the kid has got by, the age of 20. It doesn't give you any indication of what the exposure was to 6th, 7th, and 8th years. So here was a lousy study, promised for 5 years, used by all the promoters. So, I mean, there's so much horrible, disgusting politics in this. It just makes me want to cry.
I feel you, sir. We feel the same way here in Milwaukee. It's absolutely true. You spoke about the health damages that occur from taking fluorosilic. And one question I want to make sure I get in. Where does this fluoride come from, and then what are the damages to the body? But first off, when you said pharmaceutical grade versus the other grade, where do they actually obtain fluorosilic acid? Okay.
Right. Okay. Very important. The fluoride that is used in dental products, whether we're talking about toothpaste, mouthwash, varnishes, or whatever, that fluoride is pharmaceutical grade. It's as pure as you can get. Like any drugs, you don't want contaminants in the drugs. Okay. The fluoride that they use in the drinking water is derived largely from the wet scrubbing system of the phosphate fertilizer industry. The wet scrubbing system is to collect the pollutants that would otherwise damage the environment, which they did for many, many years.
But we can drink them. It's okay to drink them, right? You just can't throw them in the lake, but we can drink them.
It's worse than that, Michael. It's worse than that. They can't dump this crap into the sea by international law.
Right.
It's far too concentrated to dump locally, but if someone buys it from them, it stops being classified as a hazardous waste. It becomes a product. And it's on this basis that they are adding a known industrial waste product, a contaminated waste product, into the drinking water. And let me tell you something which is absolutely precise and very clear-cut. One of the contaminants which shows up in the analysis of the bulk materials is nearly always arsenic. Arsenic. Now think of that for a moment. We are adding a substance to the drinking water which is known to contain arsenic. Arsenic is a known human carcinogen.
Yes.
There is no safe level for a human carcinogen, according to the U.S. EPA, which means any exposure of the U.S. population to arsenic will increase the cancer risk, cancer rates.
Because it's bioaccumulative.
You can't even argue about it. I mean, it's a known carcinogen. You're adding a known carcinogen, and you don't have to, but we are. We're adding a known human carcinogen to the water supply, which will inevitably increase cancer rates in the United States. We can argue about how big or how small, but it's a ridiculous thing to do if what you're trying to accomplish is a small reduction in tooth decay, if that.
What about radioactive isotopes? I heard down in Texas that they found them.
Yep, that's another scary thing. The phosphate rock, which is the source of this process, this phosphate rock is treated with sulfuric acid to produce phosphoric acid, soluble phosphate, which is then used in fertilizer. The rock that is mined for phosphate in Florida is also mined for uranium. So one of the other contaminants in there as well, several contaminants, is going to be the breakdown products of radioactive uranium. Again, trace amounts, and they will argue that by the time you've done dilution, it won't hurt you. But to me, that's not the point. You don't have to do this. It's a huge violation of the precautionary principle to knowingly put industrial waste chemicals into the drinking water.
It's the same for pesticides as well, though. We can't throw them away, but we can put them on our lawn and then let the rainwater wash them off into our rivers and streams, though, right?
Yeah,
That's the way they do it. Business as usual.
You know, one of the discredited environmental policies going back a number of years is the answer to pollution is dilution. But people realized that was not a viable way to treat pollution because Mother Nature, bless her, reconcentrates. After you've diluted, it reconcentrates. And that's the problem with the emissions from incinerators, where I got in 27 years ago. The shock was that dioxins, even though you can dilute them coming out of the stack of an incinerator, nature is there with fish and grazing animals to reconcentrate in dramatic form that pollutant. So the answer to pollution is not dilution, and the answer to a hazardous waste product is not to put it in the drinking water and not to flush it back into the environment, which is inevitably what's going to happen.
There's that bioaccumulative effect where the plants are eaten by the animals, and the bigger animals eat the smaller animals, and eventually, you're saying by the time you get it, it's really concentrated. Is that...
Yeah, well, in this case, the dioxins are slightly different because they concentrate in the fat, and there's a very clear magnification as you go up the aquatic food chain or the terrestrial food chain with one animal. If the material is not easily metabolized, not easily got rid of, then it's going to get more and more concentrated up the food chain. Now, in the case of fluoride, it concentrates largely in the bone.
Okay.
And our concern here in terms of the human diet is any food that has bone in it, like mechanically deboned meat. You can't see it, but when you mechanically debone meat, little chips of bone which you can't see, which will be in the final product. So things like chicken patties, hamburgers, chicken broth, etc., made from these products have fairly high levels of fluoride in, and fish have high levels of fluoride in their shells and bones and so on. And so that's of concern there. That's where the food chain gets us. But in terms of the human being itself, when you're very young, about 90% of the fluoride in babies accumulates in the bones because the kidneys are not working properly, not getting rid of enough. In children, about 50% accumulate. In adults, about 10%, we think, is concentrated in the bones. And then as the adults get old, their kidney function tends to break down, and they start to accumulate more fluoride. And that's of concern. When you know that, let's say on average, 50% of the fluoride that you take in each day goes to your bone, we have a huge amount of experimental data in countries like Mexico, Iran, India, and China, particularly India, where fluoride has literally damaged the bones of millions of people. We have a condition called skeletal fluorosis. We have areas which are endemic for fluorosis because they have higher than normal levels of fluoride in their drinking water. So there's no mystery here. We know that fluoride damages health. The only argument about is whether at 1 part per million, which is the level you add in, 1.1 parts per million is the level you add in Milwaukee, whether that will damage health. But there's no argument that fluoride damages health. And as far as the bones are concerned, the first symptom of fluoride poisoning of the bone, which is skeletal fluorosis, means poisoning of the skeleton. The first symptoms are just like arthritis, stiffness of the joints, pains in the joints, pains in the bones. And there are millions of Americans that have some form of arthritis. It's something like 1 in 3.
What about young people? The young people, they didn't used to get arthritis years ago, did they? Or are these arthritis-like symptoms?
Well, they might have had some forms of arthritis because there's some different causes of arthritis. But if you're as an adult, say to your doctor, supposing you get diagnosed with arthritis, and say, well, doctor, what's causing that?
Yeah.
He says, we don't really know.
Oh, yeah.
But we think it's got something to do with aging.
Uh-huh.
Well, what else has to do with aging in the United States? And the answer is how long you've lived in a fluoridated community, how long you've been ingesting and putting fluoride into your bones. And guess what? We've known about this for at least 70 or 80 years.
Wow, that's horrible.
That fluoride could do this. And yet, there's never been a single study in the United States to investigate if there's a relationship between the amount of fluoride that's been ingested over your lifetime or the amount of time that you've spent in a fluoridated community and whether or not there's is related to arthritis. Never looked at it. If you don't look, you don't find. The absence of studies is not the same as absence of harm. But that's what's being assumed. Oh, we've been fluoridating for 50 years. We don't see any. 60 years. We don't see any. All these things that Dr. Conant is talking about. Well, if you don't look, you don't find. What about a relationship between, we know that fluoride was used to lower thyroid function. Doctors were doing this in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. What about looking to see if there's any relationship with the epidemic of underactive thyroid gland in this country and, again, exposure to fluoride? Haven't done it. Haven't looked. We have at least 26 studies. As I said before, we're getting more studies translated from China, but there's at least 26 studies which show an association between fluoride exposure, modest fluoride exposure, and lowered IQ. Now, all the authorities in fluoridated countries, whether you're talking about Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, England, Canada, Israel, Malaysia, Singapore, all they do when you bring these studies up about lowered IQ is to challenge the methodology, point out weaknesses in the methodology, which is fair enough. It's very easy to poke holes in epidemiology, but why don't these people with this superior understanding of epidemiology, why the Dickens don't they go out and do their own studies? Why are there no IQ studies in England, no IQ studies in Canada, no IQ studies throughout the United States, no IQ studies in Australia, only one small one from the 1980s in New Zealand? Why are they not attempting to reproduce these studies which have caused harm? And the answer is simple. It's politics. They are more interested at this point in time in protecting this practice for some reason, and I won't go into what the reasons are, than to protect the health of the American people. And the thing which I find absolutely disgusting in this is that we have paid civil servants. We are paying their salaries. We, the citizens, are paying the civil servants that work in the regulatory agencies' salaries.
Yeah.
And they are spinning the science.
Yeah.
I can't think of any justification for a civil servant who's meant to be serving the public and protecting our health spinning the issue. Why do they go before the public and only give them one side of this issue? Why don't they at least tell them that there are these studies out there and they're not conclusive, but that you should be aware of it? Why aren't it's unbelievable to me. Like, you have the chief dental officer of Wisconsin testified before Jim Bowles, that council, the subcommittee hearing last week. That was spin. All he gave us is spin. Well, fluoridation is safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective.
Right.
If he doesn't say that, incident, he's going to lose his job.
Good propaganda is simple and direct, and it speaks to the ignorance of the people. Yes. And that's what he's spewing, is propaganda. I would love to ask you, I mean, I know you just said you don't want to get into this, but what agenda? Who is bringing this down upon us? Who's paying the payrolls for these guys to keep them in the dark, and why?
Well, I would look at that at three levels. First of all, there are very few people that are actually running this show, number one. And we'll get to that in a moment. But when you're looking at a bureaucracy, or the chain, I would prefer to call it the chains of command. There are two chains of command that work together to push fluoridation in the United States. One chain of command is headed up by the American Dental Association, a trade association for dentists, and the other organization that heads up the chain of command is the Center of Disease Control, the Oral Health Division.
The CDC.
And they work very closely together. The American Dental Association and the Oral Health Division of the CDC. They have conferences together. They share propaganda together. Anyway, you've got these two chains of command. Okay. Now go to the bottom of those two chains of command. You've basically got, at the very bottom, you've got your doctors and your dentists. What's the problem with them? I have no problem with them.
Okay.
Many of them are true believers in fluoridation,
yes,
because essentially it's the only thing that they were taught at dental school, that fluoridation was the best thing since sliced bread at dental school,
yes,
and
right,
medical school. And now that they've graduated from those entities, they don't have time, like I do as a retired professor, to read all the literature. So they simply take what they're told, the mantra from their professional bodies and from the CDC, fluoridation is safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, and the people opposed to this are a bunch of Looney Tunes. So that's what they go around thinking. And until they find a lot more time to actually read my book or look at some of the other materials on our website, fluoridealert.org, they're going to continue in that way.
What's the name of that book?
The Case Against Fluoride.
By Dr. Paul Khanna.
Three scientists wrote that. Myself, I was the lead author, a chemist. You have Dr. James Beck, who's a PhD physicist who also holds an MD. He's a doctor as well. And you've got Professor Spedding Micklem from Edinburgh, Scotland, who's a PhD or Doctor of Philosophy of Biology from Oxford.
And we can get that book off your website, fluoridealert.org.
No, get it from Amazon.com. That's
Amazon, okay.
Thing to do. Yeah, they're quick, and I think there's probably as cheap there as anywhere else.
One more time,
and
the title of that book?
80 pages of references to that book.
And the name of that book, one more time for the listening audience?
The Case Against Fluoride.
Okay, write that down.
If people want to inform themselves, the quicker way of doing it, I mean, the book is there for backup. The book is basically the book is for citizens, to let them know you go out and oppose fluoridation because it's a stupid thing to do. But please, with this book in hand, you're never going to be embarrassed because there's solid science behind that opposition. You may want to oppose it simply because you don't believe the government has the right to force medication on people through the public water supply. And that's a very solid argument right there. But if you want to feel that you're on secure grounds, you have that book. And you also have the knowledge that after 19 months, the promoters of fluoridation have not come up with a scientific response to the book. They're doing what they always do, which is to ignore us. Ignore, ignore, ignore.
Cowards.
Refuse to debate. Refuse to answer our questions in writing, and refuse in this case to come back with a scientific analysis. They can answer their own questions. They simply can't answer our questions. Okay, let's go back to those chains of command.
Please.
So we got the doctors and dentists at the bottom of the chain here, who in the case of the dentists are true believers. It's something they're very proud of, fluoridation. Okay, it's their contribution to public health, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have the middle level. You have the middle level bureaucrats. And what a bureaucrat learns very quickly in our regulatory agencies is you don't challenge policy. You don't challenge policy if you're interested in promotion or keeping your job, because the moment you challenge policy, you're seen as a troublemaker. Your job is not to question policy. Your job is to enact it, to promote it.
Do you get your license pulled if you challenge them?
Well, some dentists have suffered nasty reprisals. Some science researchers, some government officials have been fired? When they question fluoridation.
Ooh.
I mean, Phyllis Mullinex was the chief toxicologist at the Forsyth Dental Center. She was the chairman of the toxicology department at Forsyth.
Right.
And she published a book which shows that fluoride accumulates in the animal brain and changes behavior, which has since been verified about 100 times, incidentally.
Changes behavior?
And she was fired and told that her work was no longer relevant for dentistry. That happened in 1995. And then you've got a fellow at the EPA Water Division, Dr. William Marcus. He questioned the peer review process, which downgraded some of the cancer results in an animal study, and he was fired. He was later reinstated for false dismissal and with back pay. But it shows you, and many dentists and some doctors say that they agree with us in private, but are too frightened to come out in public because they're frightened of the peer pressure that's going to be exerted on them, possibility of licensing. In Canada, it is very clear. The College of Dental Surgeons made it very clear. The Royal College of Dental Surgeons in cross-examination said if a dentist spoke out against fluoridation and a member of the public complained about that, they would be up on disciplinary hearings. So there's no question that if you're a dentist, you're expected to promote this practice, and if you don't, you're suspect. In fact, the American Dental Association put that into writing in 1979. They said, and I'm quoting almost word for word here, dentists need not be familiar with the scientific literature on fluoridation to be effective proponents. And if they fail to promote fluoridation, it is overt neglect of professional responsibility. That's almost word for word. So here, it's a very strange definition of professionalism. That you don't need to be on top of the science to be an effective participant in the promotion of propaganda machinery. And if you don't do it, you're not living up to your obligations as a professional.
So this is
very Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we went down the rabbit hole just recently. This is institutionalized quackery, then.
Yep. Well, at the top now, this is a long way around, Michael, to answer your question. So what's the motivation at the top? The people in the middle want to hang on to their jobs.
Right.
Okay, that's simple. They want to go. The people at the top, I think, and this is the conjecture now. This is conjecture. Take it or leave it. Personally, I believe that they have promoted this for so long. They have waxed so eloquently on its behalf for so long that I think they now believe that if they admit that they were wrong, they're going to lose credibility.
Oh, yeah.
And that translates into losing the public's trust. And that translates into threatening other public health practices. So what you might be seeing here is one of the situations as old as the hills. The end justifies the means. You have a good end. You want to protect your credibility. You want to protect all your programs designed to help public health. If you lose fluoridation, the one that you put on the crown, if you lose that, then the public's going to start raising questions about other public policies, and it doesn't take you long to work out what one of the top ones might be, and that is vaccination.
Oh, wait, right. Definitely vaccination.
If you get to vaccination, you're looking at a multi-billion-dollar interest.
Right.
And that may be why we're seeing this long, drawn-out defense for fluoridation to delay the day of reckoning on vaccination.
Oh, that day must come.
Other public health programs.
That day must come. That day must come. The people listening today, look, the lie is being exposed. It's a paper tiger, folks. All you have to do is poke around, just find a little bit, listen to what Dr. Conant is saying. We can bring this thing down. We can change it. And if it disrupts this status quo, so what? Obviously, they are not protecting our best interest as the public, but we as the public, we can't rely on the leaders. As followers, we must take this upon ourselves to say, no, we're going to listen to what true experts like Dr. Conant are saying, and we're going to stop this practice. Let it fall. Let it all fall. Go ahead, sir.
Well, look, Michael, before they don't have to accept everything I'm saying at this point. This is a simple common sense thing. You've got two very strong armies for and against fluoridation. Okay, which one do you trust? The other side says, trust us, we've got authority, we're the government, we're your professional bodies. But I say, which of those two sides is prepared on any day, in any place, to go on a public platform and defend this in open public debate?
Right.
And our side is the only side that will do that. I will go anywhere to debate this with anybody that's pro-fluoridation. And for 16 years, almost completely denied. So that's one of the things that the citizens of Milwaukee say. If it's as clear-cut as the editors of our local newspaper have said, then get those experts in whom you trust to come to a public meeting in Milwaukee and defend their position with the discipline of having the other side present. And I pledge to come back to Milwaukee to do that if they can come up with experts, any experts from throughout the United States, from throughout the world, put them on a public platform and defend this against us.
Well, Dr.
And I can...
I'm sorry, Dr. Khanna, let me take that challenge upon me, and I'm going to hunt down for somebody, anybody in this city that is willing to stand on the other side, put their name to it, and bring up the evidence that will refute your truth and fact. So that's definitely, I'm going to make phone calls. I'm going to say, are you willing to put your evidence and reputation on the line to debate Dr. Khanna here in Milwaukee? Let's do this like an MMA match. Let's try to promote this thing.
Please, Michael, do me a favor.
Yes, sir.
Would you make careful notes?
Yes, sir.
Make a note of the day and the time that you phone these people or write to these people. Make a note of what they say, and maybe a month or so from now, let's have me back on the program.
Oh, yeah.
And you discuss with me what the response was to this challenge to debate.
Yes,
and one other thing I would throw out there to your listeners, and again, thanks for doing this.
Yes, sir.
One other thing I would throw out there is if they go to a web page, they can watch a 28-minute videotape. So if people have been, intrigued by this, they don't believe me right now, but if they're intrigued, rather than read a book, which might take a few days or a few weeks, go to our web page and watch a video. It's 28 minutes long. It's called Professional Perspectives on Water Fluoridation, and it features 15 scientists. It includes a Nobel Prize winner. It includes 2 former risk analyzers from the EPA. It includes 3 members of the National Research Council, which reviewed this subject for 3.5 years. It reviews some prestigious people from the UK that are well known. It includes a Nobel Prize winner. I think I mentioned that. So in 28 minutes, they go through the 10 basic reasons why fluoridation should stop. And if you can't give 28 minutes for this to investigate one side of the issue, admittedly, in 28 minutes. What you find is with people like myself, you look for our agenda. I have no axe to grind here. I've had a horrible amount of discomfort over the last 16 years trying to get this. I thought it was going to take a very short time when I read the science. It's taken a horribly long time. It depresses the hell out of me. It's changed my attitude of what makes this country tick and the role of science in public debate and so on. It's completely disillusioned me in terms of the integrity of our government when it comes to issues, controversial issues like this. Integrity only really gets examined when the issue becomes controversial. You're not exercising much courage to take a position on an issue which is clear-cut. But when the issue is controversial, then it does take some courage to come out on one side or the other.
Yes, it does.
And the integrity is lacking here. There's no integrity at the Oral Health Division of the CDC. There's no integrity at the American Dental Association. And you can keep going down the list. And that's pretty sad. I mean, I'm not happy to say those things. I'd much rather have somebody to believe in when it comes to science on controversial issues.
I would, yes. Definitely. Yeah. Well, we're putting that challenge out there to the city, to the world, anybody. I don't care. You could be in the nation. This is a worldwide broadcast. Please, you think Dr. Khanna, you can refute his information? We're going to find you. We just need one person to come forward and take the other side, other stance. It's amazing.
Well, let me up the ante on that challenge because
sir.
This isn't going to be easy, Michael. Let me explain. Back in 2003, I got a phone call from the U.S. EPA. They said, we are having the annual science fair in Washington, D.C., and each year we have a debate. And this year we'd like to have a debate on water fluoridation. Would you participate in that debate? I said, yes, I would. Straight away, I said, yes, I'd participate in a debate. They spent the next 5 weeks trying to find one expert in government or in any of the professional bodies, any of the promoters of fluoridation, to come and debate me in Washington, D.C. They couldn't find one single expert in North America to do that.
Well, if that's the case,
and so in the end, I just ended up giving a presentation.
If that's the case, then we'll leave it like that. I mean, if you get in the ring and you show up, you got your gloves on, and nobody comes in there, we're just going to pronounce you the winner. I mean, that's it. Just by default alone. If nobody in the government, in the ADA, in the MDA, the FDA, the EPA, hell, we'll take the World Health Organization. Anybody can come forward, and they won't.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, you if you didn't know the science of the issue, their very behavior makes you very, very suspicious. You don't have to intimidate people. You don't have to twist people's arms. You don't have to refuse to debate on something in which you are proud, something that you think is very, very good, and something in which you feel the opposition is extremely weak. You would grab the opportunity to debate. I mean, I would.
I would too.
If I was very, very proud of a particular practice and I saw it being challenged, I would be the first to run out there and say, I'll debate you. Come on, give me your best arguments. But the fact that they won't do that should make everybody suspicious. It should make the counselors suspicious.
Yes.
I did actually issue this challenge at the press conference we had in the Rotunda on the morning. And in the evening, I issued the challenge again. Anybody that I said, you're going to hear these people, they're going to come through with enormous amount of confidence in this practice, ask them to come back and debate me. Asked if anyone, no, there was nobody. Nobody came up to me after that meeting. I'll debate you. Tell me the place and time. No.
You know,
just as if I never issued that challenge at all. But good luck. Try, and let's talk about it.
I can't believe, I mean, really, if people are listening, just knowing this alone, that nobody will show up and debate this, it should make you feel suspicious about this. It should make you really question. But we know the reason why people don't want to question this issue, I think the majority of them, once you uncover this lie, there's a whole slew of other lies that just come tumbling down afterwards, don't they?
I think that's the problem. I think that's it. When you prop up one bad thing with another, and this is what brings down politicians is not the scandal. If you go back to the recent scandals, it's very seldom that the act itself was sufficient to topple the career, say, of Nixon and Watergate. What toppled Nixon is he lied about it.
Okay, yes.
And in various sex scandals that we had in England. It's not the sex scandal itself. We can live with those. It's that people in high places have lied. And once that lie is revealed, and to prop up the lie, you have to, to keep on doing it. So when it does unravel, as Watergate unraveled, then, you saw not just one lie, but you saw a multitude of lies to protect the first lie. And so it goes.
Dr. Conant, I swear, I really thank you. It's amazing that how much support do you get? I mean, how many people are actively pursuing this issue besides yourself?
Well, hundreds, literally hundreds around the world. I mean, one of the things that we did when we formed the Fluoride Action Network back in 1990, in the late 90s, it was very clear to me that we had very good scientists and lots of activists fighting locally and often they were successfully locally. But people weren't going beyond the local battles. They weren't trying to put the whole thing together and make a national or even a statewide, a national, or even an international network. And fortunately, this coincided with the time that Internet began to really take off in a big way.
Okay.
And with the Internet and emails, we've been able to bring together a wonderful coalition of people. Now, in the terms of the population, we're still a minority of people. We've had over 4,000 professionals calling for an end to fluoridation. But we're still a minority of professionals. Most people won't commit either way. But that's what keeps me going, is the people that I work with. When I meet these people, either fellow experts of one kind or another, or I meet citizens in communities where I speak, I look at them and I say, why are you doing this? Why are you coming to this meeting? Why are you giving up an evening? Why are you giving up a weekend for this conference? Why have you spent so many years fighting this? And I look, is it for money? Are you doing this for money? No. There's no one making a lot of money fighting fluoridation. Are you doing this to get power? Is this a secret plan to get elected to whatever? No. Nobody is getting into big public office because of their fighting fluoridation. What is the motive? And the answer is, the motive is you want the truth, you want to protect your children, you want to protect your grandchildren, you want to protect your community. But and people that put so much effort to do that, protecting their children, their grandchildren, their community, their country, protect the whole notion that science should be there to serve the public, not violate the public's interest. They're the best people in the world. And I've had that privilege of working with them, and that's what keeps me going. Otherwise, it's incredibly frustrating. But I should leave on a positive note.
Yes, sir.
Since October the 25th, 2010, and that was the day that Canada met its Waterloo as far as fluoridation is concerned, the people of Waterloo, admittedly by a small margin, won a referendum to take fluoride out of Waterloo's water supply. And that has started a sort of domino effect. And in the 18 months since that happened, we've now seen over 50 communities, mostly in the United States, some in Canada, and a couple in New Zealand, stop fluoridation. And the combined population of those 50 communities is over 3 million. And so 3 million people have been liberated from fluoridation in the last 18 months, and I think we're on a roll. I think you're going to see the number continue. Great. And if you could get it out of Milwaukee, that would be so big. That would have nationwide ramifications and worldwide ramifications. I can tell you this. If Milwaukee was to do this, within a few seconds, people in Australia, New Zealand, in England, in Ireland, in Israel, throughout Canada, throughout the United States, would be celebrating, would be jumping up and down, and it would be magnificent, and it would be really important for us, very important. And I can't tell you how proud I am of your your alderman, Jim Bowl. I mean,
we are too.
He didn't just fire off from the cuff here.
No.
He spent 2 years researching this issue before he introduced that legislation.
Dr. Conant, thank you so much. We're going to take up that challenge. We're going to attempt to find somebody out there. If you'd like to come back on the show, say, a couple of weeks, a month or so?
Whenever you feel. I'm here. I'll do it whenever you need me. But I think it'd be best after you've had a real sincere effort to get somebody to debate me.
We will try, sir. We will try. I want to thank you for all your valuable information. Thank you for coming to our city and helping us with this cause. We're behind you, sir. We're behind Alderman Bowl. And we're behind anybody else in the world that's actually fighting this cause. It's very noble. Dr. Conant, thank you for your time.
Michael, before I go,
yes, sir.
Sorry, there's one incredibly important fact I forgot to mention. If you could squeeze this.
Absolutely, sir. Yes, sir.
It was a fact that when I learned this 16 years ago, it really just put the nail in the coffin of this practice as far as I was concerned. And that was the level of fluoride in mother's milk.
Mother's milk?
Now, mother's milk. Now, mother's milk, as you know, is baby's first meal. This is the meal that's designed to give the baby everything it needs. And as long as the mother is not malnourished, that meal is the best you can do for the baby. Okay, so when I looked at the level in mother's milk, it's incredibly low. It's 0.004 parts per million. So when someone says to you, oh, well, we're only fluoridating Milwaukee's water at 1.1 parts per million, you can turn around and say, and do you realize that's 275 times higher than the level in mother's milk? Do you realize that a mother or a father that bottle feeds their baby in Milwaukee is giving that baby 275 times more fluoride than nature intended?
No.
1 part per million is not small when it comes to fluoride.
Sir, that is a great point. That is a great point. I hope everyone heard that out there.
And if you lower it to 0.7, which to me is a pathetic compromise. I mean, that's no solution at all. But supposing you lowered it to 0.7, it would still be 175 times higher than the level in mother's milk.
In mother's milk, is there nothing sacred anymore?
It's reckless. It's reckless. I mean, when I saw that, I said, hey, who knows more about what the baby needs? The American Dental Association or Mother Nature or God or evolution? However you see this development of the constituents of mother's milk.
That is... Listen, folks, if you don't care about yourselves, care about your children, care about your pets, the pets are drinking the water, too. They get kidney problems. They get the same sort of IQ reduction, the calcification of the brain, the pineal gland, correct, Dr.
And the same kind of bone damage.
And the bone damage.
Look at dogs with arthritis.
Dogs with arthritis. You know, look, I feed our pets always drink mineral water. We purify our water. That's fact. I wanted to mention that it's one of the quickest ways people can go out there. Get a reverse osmosis system. That'll do it, won't it, Doctor? RO?
Yeah,
does that work?
it's not all the. Unfortunately, whatever you buy to purify your water, to get the fluoride out, make sure you get it tested with a lab. Make sure you get. The company tells you what it should do. Make sure you get your water tested after you've put it in, and if it's higher than they say, then take the machine back.
What is it, 0.4 microns it should go down to? Is that sufficient?
I'm not in the business of selling equipment.
I'll research
so I'm
that.
not going to go into that.
Yes, sir.
Just make sure the company will guarantee the levels that you will get, and then have it tested. And if it tests above what they say, then go back and say you want your money back.
Indeed, sir. Indeed, sir. Again, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I just wanted to make sure that I had time to squeeze in any last bits of information that you might have or any points you'd like to make. But
I think the simplest and quickest thing that people can do, if they can spend 28 minutes or even half the time, I think watching half a video will probably be enough. But go to our website, fluoridealert.org, and make sure you spell fluoride right. It's F-L-U.
Oh.
Not F-L-O, F-L-U-O.
No, F-L-U-O, yes.
Yes.
It's the opposite of what you would think it would be. F-L-U-O.
And you'll find, and I also want to tell you that come the end of this month, you should see a dramatic, my son has been working for months now, upgrading this site. We should get some pretty dramatic stuff there with translation of many papers from China and elsewhere. There's much, we've only looked at the tip of the iceberg so far. There's much more science to come.
And
So go to their website. There's 10 arguments against fluoridation. That will fill one side of a piece of paper. There's 50 reasons to oppose fluoridation. That will fill about 6 pages. And then you've got the book. But then also you can watch online this videotape, professional perspectives on water fluoridation. 28 minutes long, 15 scientists, level-headed, down-to-earth, simple, easy to understand, and I think, personally, very, very convincing.
Can we still subscribe to your fan newsletter or emailer? The Fluoride Action?
No, anybody that emails us will get the bulletins that we send out.
Okay.
We obviously, anytime anybody wants to send a donation, that's fine. If you go to a webpage, there are one or two things they can get, like mugs, which says fluoride not in my water, bumper stickers, and all that kind of stuff, T-shirts,
People
all those
do
kind
it.
of things.
Yes, go there and get those things. Definitely.
Yeah, you can get anybody that wants regular bulletins on this can get them from us, and just sign up online and we'll send them to you.
You know, sir, they will. I hope that many people go and actually, it's fluoridealert.org. Dr. Paul Connett, and your book is The Case Against Fluoride, available on Amazon.com. Please watch his 28-minute video.
Yeah, and Michael, here's another little tip. Some people have told me, and sometimes in a rather embarrassed fashion, they said, I didn't have time to read your whole book, but I was able to go through your book very quickly by reading the summary. Each chapter has like a couple of paragraphs summary at the end.
Yes.
And it's just like reading about 10 pages, I guess, in total. You can go from one end of the book to the other, just reading the summaries of the chapters. And they said that was good enough for us. So again, the book is great. It's your final ammunition. You have this in your pocket to give you the confidence that you know that the other side has not been able to topple the arguments in that book. Our barricades remain unbreached by the proponents.
Excellent, sir. Excellent. Again, thank you for this, for your effort and contribution. Maybe one day our grandchildren will live in a fluoride-free society. We will have increased IQ, no arthritis, no brain problems. And our cells and organs will actually thrive and survive. And it will be because of people like you, sir.
And you, Michael, too. I mean, we need the media. I mean, I've never been so cognizant of the fact that if you don't have a strong media, if you don't have investigative journalism, you're very in danger of losing your democracy. And that fourth estate is really important to us. And I would say this. Hopefully, this may be my final statement today. You give me such a long time here. But, ending fluoridation is as easy as turning off a tap. It's as easy as turning off the spigot at the waterworks. Unlike many other issues, I can think of many other issues out there, environmental health issues, global warming, ozone damage, deforestation, health issues, obesity, diabetic epidemic, and so on and so on and so on. And even when people want to do it, it's very, very difficult. But once you have the political will, you can turn off that tap and it's over, at least as far as fluoride in water is concerned. It's over. But to turn off that tap, you need the political will. And to get that political will, you need millions of people informed and millions of people organized. As I said in my presentation, we have to beat fluoridation one open mind and one community at a time. Do not expect much help from central government here, but we can get help from individuals and also from communities. And this is where programs like yours are so important, not just to inform people, but to motivate people to get out there and work on this. And if nothing else, I can't think of anything else to do, pick up the phone, call Jim Bowl and say, I thank you for doing what you're doing. How can I help? I'm sure he'll have something to suggest.
And you can find Jim Bowl, Alderman Jim Bowl's contact information on the Milwaukee.gov site. Just go there, Google Alderman Jim Bowl. It'll pull you right up. He's got an email. He's got a phone number. Yes, please get behind him. We need your support in all seriousness.
Yep. He's very rare. We haven't seen many legislators who've done this, who have actually done their homework, who've gone and spent 2 years researching the issue, then put in the money to get experts from Oregon, from Atlanta, from New York State to come and testify at the hearing. This is very rare. That public hearing, which went on for 7 hours, and incidentally, I was very impressed with the chairman. I thought he was excellent. I think he was firm, but I think he was fair. It was the first time I felt that I had plenty of time to say everything I wanted to say, and I thought that some of the counselors were very, very astute in their understanding, in the questions they asked. So I think you should be feeling very proud of Jim on the one hand, and also some of the other counselors and the chairman for doing something which is very rare in the United States, and I do feel that we opened a few minds. I was not surprised that they didn't just vote it down after that hearing, but I was very positively inspired by the fact that they were asking the right questions and they were doing their homework and exercising due diligence. And I can only think that it's just a matter of time before Milwaukee would do the right thing.
I sure hope so, sir. I sure hope so. And it's going to take the people getting behind it, like you said. We have to help. Sir, well, thank you again. We are coming up now to the actual critical moment where we really do have to sign off here. I want to thank you. We got a full hour and a half with you, and that really is
wonderful.
Definitely. Anytime. I'm going to put that challenge out there. We're going to try and get you somebody to get into the ring with. I think they're cowards, and they're not going to put their reputation on the line, but you, sir, are, and we thank you. Dr. Paul Conant, everyone.
Thank you, Michael.
Good day to you, sir. Goodbye.
Every day, people wake up all over the world and hear commercials like this one, with soft music and a soothing announcer's voice telling you how great some big corporation's new technology will help you and your family. But it is important to remember, these companies could give a flying fuck about you or your family. That's why Breaking Down the News has made this commercial to counter their commercials. Don't be fooled by them. The battle is to gain control of your mind through media propaganda. Just say no to evil corporations and their slick computer graphics designed to brainwash viewers. Vote no with your dollars, and we will regain the health of our nation, one consumer at a time.
All right, we're back. I am Michael Wordsworth. You're listening to Breaking Down the News on this Friday edition. We have a horrible situation up north in Clark County. Thank goodness Pamela Jafke is on the case. They've erected a cell phone tower, and for many of you that don't know, these towers are damaging. They put out EMF waves that affect the minds, affect the bodies, affect nature in general. The whole problem could be solved with a simple $35 part. Pamela, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike. And I do want to get the word out because most people are not aware of the dangers of these cell towers. They see them go up, and they don't know the problem. And I do want to say that my city of Owen has been working with me, and we did pass a very comprehensive cell tower ordinance. So I do applaud the city, but they're not getting any cooperation from the cell tower owners within the city.
So you do have the support of the city council at this moment?
Yes, I do.
Oh, thank goodness.
And I've been very, very grateful. They've worked with me. I worked with the lawyer to draft the ordinance, and yeah, they have been very helpful. It's the cell tower people who are in total disrespect of any of the codes, ordinances out there, and totally disrespectful of the people and animals that they're harming. And this dovetails into the whole entire electrical pollution problem, where the whole electrical grid is just not able to support the electricity that's out there right now, and so electricity in general is, we're being harmed from it. But I'll talk to that in a minute.
Please.
The problem with cell towers, one of the problems, there's two problems. One of them is that the strobe light on top, that flashing light every 1.5 seconds, it creates a 2.5 million hertz cycle, and the normal electrical cycle is 60, so 2.5 million is a long way from 60.
Wow,
and
that is a lot. That's a huge
That's
difference.
a long way from 60. And what happens is that our electrical wiring is so bad that every 1.5 seconds, 10,000 volts goes up to the strobe light, and then every time it flashes, this transient or spike in the 60 cycle wave, this 2.5 million spike, comes down on the electrical wiring. Well, the wiring normally can't handle it for reasons I'll explain later, and so it goes into the ground. It goes, on the general wiring instead of being neutralized. It's actually strong enough when it's on the wiring in your house, according to an electrical engineer I've been in contact with, to penetrate the walls. And so if it can penetrate, the plaster in the walls, what is it doing, after it penetrates, the walls? What is it doing to the human body?
Wow.
I have a cat that is very sensitive to the electrical pollution because I did have bad wiring in my house, and she was exposed to it for a long time. I've since rewired my entire house. And when that cell tower went up, me as a veterinarian, I pulled out all the stops, and only because I'm a veterinarian, I think my cat is still alive today. And I noticed problems. You have problems sleeping, fatigue, even ringing in the ears, muscle pain. It's a whole gamut of. The bottom line is, what we call an RF choke, which is RF for radio frequency choke. It's a simple $35 part. It's a coil of wires you put around the wiring that's going up to the strobe light, and think of an acid neutralizing a base. I mean, it neutralizes that transient. It's not a big deal to fix it.
A $35 part.
A $35 part.
Who's holding up that part being put up there? I mean, that's the question. You can't get the owners to stick it on there?
Right. I mean, the railroad put the tower up. And they, contracted, obviously, a company. They're in the railroad business, not the cell tower business. So they contracted somebody to put the tower up. And, I've called the railroad, and they really do need to get somebody to teach them public relations.
Which railroad is this?
Canadian National.
Canadian National. Huh.
So I'm also dealing with the foreign company. So, that's just wonderful.
On American soil, of course.
Yes.
Goodness. Yeah. Oh, boy.
And they have been totally disrespectful. I've never been treated more rudely. When I got an electrical engineer on who was certified by the Wisconsin Supreme Court as an expert witness, so they couldn't buffalo him. Of course, since I'm just a veterinarian and not an electrical engineer, I'm
right.
different than a box of rocks. And then they kind of started singing a new tone and said that, we'll talk. We need to be good neighbors. We'll get it on. It's like I was.
Okay, one more time, because I really want to slam these guys. The name of it's Canadian Pacific.
Canadian National, CN.
CN. Oh, we've seen them on their little rail cars all the time, the CN logo.
Canadian National.
Okay.
So, it never got put up. I talked to somebody who referred me to somebody else in the food chain, and after talking with him a couple times, and, we don't know anything about cell towers, and I said, let me give you the name of somebody who does. And then he, after about the third or fourth conversation, and I did actually document the date and the time of every one of these conversations, and when I talked to them and what they told me, I didn't record it, but I wrote it down. He admitted that, if we do it for you, we have to do it for everybody.
And how
and
many?
I thought, you paid Elgin, Illinois, $11 million in some settlement. So if you've got $11 million to throw around to give out to Elgin, Illinois, I think you can afford a $35 park times 300 towers.
300 towers times 35, so we're talking about 900 and about 1,050, something like that. It would cost them $1,000 around to
Yeah,
fix
and they
this
threw
problem.
out Elgin, Illinois, $11 million. But they can't put up a $35 cell tower, RF choke.
You would think it'd be cheaper from a PR standpoint for them to just do this, the $1,000 and then avoid the problem.
You would think, because the cell tower ordinance that the city of Owen passed says if you can't prove that you're in compliance, and believe me,
they're not in compliance, yeah.
They're not in compliance because the Public Service Commission 113.701 to .705 states it regulates cell towers, and in there it says it shall not deviate from a 60 cycle hertz, from a 60 cycle sine wave. Electricity from the tower shall not deviate from a 60 cycle sine wave. Well, guess what? 2.5 million is a long way from 60. So the city of Owen,
wow,
they couldn't force towers to say, okay, now that you're up, you have to put this RF choke on. They went through the back door, and I give the lawyer a lot of credit. He says on July 1st, every year you have to submit paperwork to prove that you're in compliance with IEEE Standards 519 and Public Service Code Commission 113.701 to .705. You have to prove that you're in compliance, or else it's a $1,000 a day fine.
And that's a county ordinance?
City of Owen.
City ordinance. Yeah, so I wonder.
And it's like the problem, there was a Telecommunications Act passed in 1996 that basically, written by the telecommunications industry, that pretty much gave them unlimited powers. We had to make sure when we wrote that ordinance that the word health was not used in that ordinance, because it is illegal to sue a cell tower owner if you suffer ill effects from the cell tower on your health. That's the telecommunications wrote that in there, that it is illegal to sue them.
How did that happen? I mean, they built that in.
Because they bought off everybody on Capitol Hill. How does everything happen?
On the state level, you're saying?
No, this is on a federal level. This is a federal Telecommunications Act of 1996.
Of course,
So
gotcha.
they think that they are immune to any regulation. But the Telecommunications Act, thank goodness, did leave the placement and the function up to local control. So there is some zoning ordinance. But if I win, and to me it's not really winning, it's just following the law.
Right.
If I get them to cooperate, then I've set a precedence. And that's the last thing they want, is a precedence set.
Oh, Pam, you got to keep on with this, because we need that precedent set.
That is the last thing they want. And there's another cell tower in town right by the school, and it's like, oh, great, fry all the kids and teachers' brains. I mean, can you get a worse place for a cell tower than a school?
Can you help me envision this thing? How tall is this tower? Approximately.
I'll tell you, a standard silo is 60, 70 feet, so it's got to be
4 or 5 stories?
Let's see, 250 feet tall, maybe.
And then how far does this electromagnetic frequency broadcast out to affect the health of people and animals around you?
Well, cows, since I'm a dairy veterinarian, cows are horribly affected by bad electricity. And there was a cell tower run up, and they switched from a rotating beacon, which was fine. I mean, just a simple light, rotating beacon, to these strobe lights. And the production went way down. And
the milk production went down.
Milk production of the cows went way down. They were severely affected because every 1.5 seconds they were getting this 2.5, megahertz transient hitting them, and it can travel for miles. When I say miles, 5, 6, 7 miles.
Okay, that was my question.
And so
wow.
They put the RF choke on the tower sometime, during the day, and that evening milking. So, I mean, it wasn't even 12 hours. It was maybe like 4 or 5 hours that the RF choke was on the tower. Those cows were up 7 pounds per cow per day.
7 pounds per cow per day.
they went up that evening milking. So if you take, all the milk that the cows produce divided by number of cows, let's say they were on average producing 60 pounds, because you have some cows in low lactation, some cows just fresh, whatever. Let's say, just throw out a number, 65 pounds they were milking. That night they went up to 72 on average. They went up 7 pounds. So you can't tell me that this stuff doesn't affect people and animals. I mean, that is documented. I mean, weights are documented because, the milk company picks up the milk and records the weight. So, I mean, there's no question.
And you might not be an electrical engineer, but you are an expert as a veterinarian, and definitely you're qualified to say, hey, this is affecting the production of these animals.
Yeah, it wasn't, my particular practice that this happened, but it's, I've seen the effect on my cat. In terms of
right. What was
all the
it?
Different issues.
Your cat wouldn't sleep in a certain area of the house because of this, or was that related to your smart meter?
That's related to my smart meter.
Okay.
That she will not touch a certain area of the house. She stays at least 90% of the time she spends in the room that's catty corner to the smart meter, as far away from that as she can.
Boy, I want to thank you, because this is an issue I personally was not aware of, and I know a lot of people. We've heard about cell towers, cell phones, EM pollution, but it's something that we really haven't let sink in how serious of an issue this is. I mean, basically, we're being bombarded.
It's serious. We are being irradiated to death by numerous sources. Smart meters are like the second, another whole issue other than cell towers.
Right, you brought that into, I could not believe that. Basically, people, if you're listening out there, Pamela Jaffke's on the line here. She's from Clark County. Cell phone tower went up, and she's saying that, look, it's putting out way too much power. The whole problem can be fixed with the $35 part. But the smart meters are a new type of meter that's put on your homes that is digital and no longer has the little rotating dials. And I wasn't sure if we had replaced ours here in the city, and I went out and looked, and by golly, if they aren't digital meters out there. And thank goodness that Pam brought this to my attention, because the previous property I was sleeping in, I had one about 8 feet from my head on the back side of the wall. And Pam, I'm not kidding. I would put my head down on the pillow, and I thought I would hear music. I thought I was going insane, because when I put my head up off the pillow, I couldn't hear the music anymore. And I don't mean like an actual audio sound.
Your head was being irradiated. I mean, it sends out radio waves. And besides the electrical pollution problem, there's a privacy problem with those, because they're like little FM radios.
Uh-huh.
Police are using them as an invasion of privacy. It's illegal search and seizure. It goes against our Constitution.
Okay. Now, do you know how that works? Are you saying that it actually can pick up audio? I know you can transmit data through power lines.
The police department they were busting people for, they were picking up like electrical usage, I think, for growing marijuana. But I don't know exactly how but it sends out a radio wave just like an FM radio, and they were picking up. And I don't know exactly what they were picking up, but, they're using it as they were making arrests. They were getting search warrants based on what they were finding from the signals they were picking up from the smart meters on your home. And I'm sorry, that's wiretapping.
That is wiretapping. I mean, that's an incredible, I believe that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah, illegal search and seizure.
Illegal search, and it's illegal because, look, how would you...
I don't have any permission to have somebody, I didn't say you could eavesdrop on me.
Right. And, I detest that attitude that some people have where they say, well, look, if you weren't doing anything, you wouldn't be concerned. And I'm like, are you serious? You have what?
No sense of privacy?
Well, here's the thing. We know if we put microphones inside the senator, congressman, even the police chiefs, a lot of police chiefs in this country are the drug dealers in your towns. That's the only, you got to ask yourself, how do these drugs get in? Why do these low-level guys always get arrested, but the main guys that bring it in never get brought down? And, well, we basically know the answer to that because they're untouchable.
So, besides smart meters basically frying us, basically I'm now living in a microwave.
Oh, gee. I mean, that's what it is. It's a microwave transmitter. Is that the best way to look at that?
I've actually got some information. It transmits. Yeah, I mean, it's actually got like a signal, like an FM radio would have a signal.
Right. Okay.
But let me find another. But it's mind-boggling that these smartphones or these smart meters, that they were put on without any regard for safety, without any regard for anything.
Well, right. Nothing. Not the constitutional considerations, not the health considerations. It almost makes you wonder. I mean, they get all bent out of shape for the dumbest things these days. But we actually have these death towers. Let's just call them death towers. Because that's what they are. I mean, they're basically killing us, slowly affecting our brains, our DNA. I bet you.
Health.
Yeah.
But smart meters are directly connected to the wiring in customers' homes. The radio frequency energy they emit not only travels through the air, but is conducted onto the wiring and surrounds customers in their homes. Reports of sleep disturbances, headaches, dizziness, nausea, fatigue, shortness of breath, heart palpitations, ringing in the ears. I never had ringing in the ears till a couple years ago. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
Memory loss and difficulty concentrating are widespread.
And a lot of people out there are going to their doctors trying to get some sort of magic pill to solve this problem, when actually you just need to remove the microwave oven outside your house that's blasting your brain.
Basically, yes.
I shouldn't laugh, but I mean, it's laugh or cry. You take your pick.
Yeah, and I've been in contact with my utility, Xcel Energy. I have, asked to have the smart meter removed. They look at me like I'm nuts, and I said, well, and I even quoted the Public Service Commission code that says, first of all, the Public Service Commission said, well, it's up to the utilities as to what kind of meter. And I said, well, guess what? According to your own Public Service Commission code, it states right there that you can override, any law, that has been written if the health of the consumer mandates a change in the law. So I said, you've got the power to tell the utilities that if the smart meters are harming people, that they need to go back to analog meters. Well, it took them a while to answer me because they were probably trying to think of somehow. And they answered back, and it was a form letter, and it said the same thing, that we cannot help you. The utilities have the final say in what kind of meters. And I thought, God help us.
This becomes a situation again where it's not we're fighting for the control of our local government and to maintain, and by control, I don't mean from a control freak standpoint. My goodness, Pamela here is just trying to keep from her cat, herself, her fellow neighbors from the tower by the school. This is something where just like, I mean, people, if they say they care, you can't bombard children and nobody signed a waiver, nobody gave permission for this. Pam, do you suspect that this is one of those regional government issues where we're getting legislation and policy handed down to us from some sort of obviously it's foreign. They're coming from Canada. I don't know who owns that railroad, but...
Yeah, Canadian National owns, the cell tower. The Public Service Commission has been funded by fees from the utilities instead of being funded by the general fund here in Wisconsin. So who do you think they answer to?
The guy with the money.
People that pay them.
Yep.
They're paid by the utilities. Their answer to the utilities. I mean, we are just, a fly on an elephant's butt to them.
Right.
And they are not, for 30 years, they have let the electrical companies in terms of the electrical pollution, but some people refer to it as straight voltage. I hate that term because it implies that nobody's responsible, and that's a terrible term. It's electrical pollution.
Yes.
They, the people they're supposed to protect are so far down the line that we're not even in the same picture. They are owned, bought, and paid for, and I don't care if I get in trouble. I don't care if anybody from the Public Service Commission hears this. I have the letters to back up what I'm saying, what you wrote to me. The last thing you care about is my concerns. You are bought and paid for by the utilities. And I don't care. You can sue me if you want. I'd love it.
And when I hear the incongruency, if they're willing to shell out $11 million to cover some liability issue, but then at the same time they won't take the preventative measures from the get-go when they put up these towers, sounds to me, and I'm just inclined to be cynical this way, maybe there's a deeper reason for this. Maybe there is this is something that they wanted in place. I mean, obviously, you're telling, I mean, I know you wouldn't tell me, but there's no scientists out there, no electrical engineers that understand the damaging health effects of both smart meters and cell towers.
There's thousands.
There's thousands. So why are their voices silent on this issue? That's what I want to know. I mean, if they're listening.
They've tried. I mean, Dave Stetzer, he has gone before the legislature so many times. He's gone to the utilities. You know, people have been fighting this issue for years, decades.